Hi, I am Melinda Fries from the Lebanon Area Foundation, and you may have noticed that every month I come on to Lebanon Now and I talk about a community need. We generally like to highlight area nonprofits or specific needs that are immediate concerns or positive opportunities in our community. And it's a tough month to make those decisions for. We're solidly in spring. We have graduations. It feels like every week, but we are also in storm season. And so my decision today was to bring one of my favorite people. She is a fabulous nonprofit leader. She does hail from Springfield, but you do not need to hold that against her. I am speaking with Lee Eastburn from the American Red Cross, and we're going to talk about disasters. Hi, how are you, Lee?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having us here today.
Thank you for coming all the way up here. What a lot of people don't realize is that the American Red Cross is a community cares grant agency because you serve Laclede County. And so I kind of want to talk to you about what Laclede County looks like for the American Red Cross. I have some questions here. I'm going to start out with, does the Red Cross offer programs or resources that help families prepare for emergencies before disaster strikes?
Yeah, thank you, Melinda. Such a pleasure to be here. Love being in Lebanon. Love eating in Lebanon, love meeting our volunteers here in Lebanon. So it's not far at all. It's a great trip to make. Here in Laclede County, we have volunteers that work 365 days a year, 24/7. No one volunteer does that, however. The American Red Cross was started by Clara Barton in 1881. She was a community member who saw a need to meet humanitarian aid. And so she ended up mobilizing a group of volunteers in her area to go and meet that need. And that model stays the same. So here in Laclede County, we have teams that work on our disaster response. So they are there and available if a big storm comes through, but also to help with home fires. We also have a biomedical services team of volunteers who help put together blood drives. We have volunteers who support our service to armed forces programs. If you see an American Red Cross emblem here in Lebanon or in Laclede County, chances are that is a volunteer doing that work and making sure that that happens, that the people of Laclede County are connected to the resources and the arm of the American Red Cross, and really just making sure that everyone here, that they don't have to walk through a disaster alone.
That's fantastic. One of the things that we have found we tend to fund, unfortunately, is home fire disaster relief. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like in Laclede County?
Yeah, so the American Red Cross responds to about 66,000 home fires each year. It's our number one disaster response. Southern Missouri, unfortunately, does have a large amount of home fires that happen each year. So we do have members of our disaster action team. They're notified by our local fire departments and first responders when there is a home fire that is affect the safety of the home or the apartment that the family is in. The disaster action team goes out. That's a group of our volunteers. They go out and they meet with the family to make sure that they have the resources, usually connecting them to local resources as well as resources from the American Red Cross. And then they connect them to our casework team. And that group is, they help work the family through any steps that you would need to recover from something like a home fire. And then also connect them to our spiritual care team if that's requested, or our mental health team, which is just some short-term support for the family if needed or requested.
So what does that support look like? Let's say they've woken up in the middle of the night. Their home is on fire. They're lucky to get out with the most precious belongings, which are usually your family members, your animals, possibly your identification if you can grab a purse on the way out. But they have nothing. And what happens when the Red Cross is called? What can they do for them immediately?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, it always is, it's good to know that the fire department is there to respond to the emergency that's happening, and that their number one responsibility is to make sure that everyone in the community is safe and that the fire is put out. if the family can, just check in with the fire department when they're checking in with them to see if they've been able to contact the American Red Cross. That will activate our teams to try to get on the ground as soon as possible, depending on availability. And that's why we're always looking for more volunteers to help fill that cadre so that we can have a robust team in Laclede County who can come out and meet their neighbors where they're at. After there is an assessment of the property on whether or not that is a possible place for someone to spend the night, they'll connect them with local resources, which can include where they can possibly go to find overnight shelter. If it's a large fire that affects many different homes, the American Red Cross might open up a shelter for the community at that point. But then making sure they have all of their contact information down. If there's a military member in the home that has lost their military paperwork, the American Red Cross can help connect them to the VA and the U.S. military to make sure that they can get those documents again. And then really making sure that they have all of the correct contact information so that if there's financial assistance that can be available. There is, again, that casework team. So the casework team will call the family up within 72 hours and ask them questions like, do you have home or renter's insurance? If so, call them, then call me back. So really help guide them through. And then if there are any additional needs that the family might have, so for example, we have a disaster health services team, which is a group of volunteers who are medical professionals. They will talk to the family. In my family, we have a lot of type 1 diabetics. One of our first concerns would be, how do we get them insulin
Absolutely.
and syringes? And so the American Red Cross Disaster Health Services team will call up the family doctor or the local hospital to make sure that those medications can be refilled. It's just one additional step that the family doesn't have to worry about. And then again, that connection to the mental health and spiritual care teams, if that's being requested. Something I'd really like to highlight for everyone is that when I was a kid and the fire department would come to my school, sometimes they would tell us we had a certain window to get out of our homes. I'm not quite sure if I'm remembering it correctly, but I thought it was about 5 minutes. Our current data is showing that with all of the different materials that are used to build homes now or that we have in our homes that we've purchased from a variety of online stores, a lot of those are petroleum or oil-based products. So really, you don't have as much time as you might think you do. I've heard fire departments say, 2 minutes or less. So we used to play the game as kids. What are you going to grab right before you run out the door? But unfortunately, you really do not have time. It's not even just the fact of the intensity of the flames, but it's also that smoke that is coming off of those materials can really affect your health. So we do recommend that if you do have the resources, to put together a little go bag for your family that might have some of those additional short-term things that you might need. In our go bag, we have the insulin and a few syringes just to help get someone through the night, but then also copies of some of our most important paperwork. So it's right there next to the door. We can grab it and just walk right out.
I know that there's definitely privilege in having a safe, fireproof location for your important documents.
Right.
But if you do have the opportunity to have a fireproof safe, or maybe even consider getting a safe deposit box at a bank, that sure would reduce a lot of the stress of the, oh my goodness, what about the children's birth certificates and all the things that are so complicated. Not everybody has that. And so what happens when people lose all their documentation in fires?
Yeah, our casework team definitely works with the family to make sure that they understand what those steps are so that they can get those documents again. I have on my phone like a private locked folder that can only be accessed through my biometrics. So like if I put my finger on it, I know, again, not everyone has a smartphone, but that is something that I do through my Google platform. I am not an IT specialist, but it is something that I do to make sure that I just have a few extra documents just in case so that I could verify my identity. But our casework team will definitely work with the family so that they understand what are the right steps to take to replace those.
When let's switch gears a little. House fires are the most common disaster for Laclede County residents, which is why we like to talk about that with everyone. It's what we tend to locally help the Red Cross Fund, and I know they spend more in our community than we give them by far. But when disaster strikes, such as floodings, tornadoes, massive hailstorms, which we've recently experienced all across the state of Missouri. A lot of times people tend to panic, of course. Where do I go? What do I do? Obviously, you want to get to a safe place, but people don't know what they should bring with them. What do you recommend as somebody who has witnessed the aftermath of these tornadoes that can just roar through? What should be in their emergency bag ready to go that you would recommend that they have for the rest of storm season?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I guess really quickly, I'd like to say the number one thing that I'd like to recommend is that Laclede County residents really think about what their emergency plan is ahead of time. Usually we have a very short window of time between a watch and a warning. And we have been seeing some very interesting weather come through.
Yes.
That so a watch is something I'm putting in my hand because the Laclede County Red Crosser always does a Be Red Cross Ready Spring Storm presentation, and whenever she says watch, she looks down to remind us that we are, if you had a watch, you were looking at the time, you're just keeping awareness. In a storm watch, you are looking outside, you are making sure that you have your emergency notifications activated on your phone, and that you're also perhaps gathering some of those small supplies so that you can quickly go to your safe place. But some of us don't even know where our safe place is. We haven't really thought about it. And different types of storms require different types of shelter. So with thunderstorms, you want to make sure that you are away from any type of windows. Same with tornadoes. You want to make sure that you're also not using your water. Thunder and lightning can hit your plumbing and then go through your water source. So no baths during thunderstorms.
No quick trip to the jacuzzi.
No washing your dishes. I know. You have to go on YouTube and listen to thunderstorm sounds if you'd like that type of ambiance. But we do not recommend that. But also making sure that you know where's the safest place if there is a tornado watch. And so with some of the weather that's been coming through, it's been coming through slowly. We've had, I'm not a meteorologist, but we will have warm air coming through and hitting cold fronts in a very slow way, which is creating like a bow kind of shape. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, sometimes what the issue is, and our concern always is that will a small tornado show up on that radar with enough time for people to realize we've gone from a watch to a warning? Right. So when you hear that there is a watch, we like to recommend that you start getting ready in that moment. And it's best if you and your family and your community members and anyone that you work with think about that in the most frequent locations where you go so that everyone knows where that safe place is to go. You could have a very short window of time to get there, so trying to make sure that you have that ascertained and that everybody knows where to go ahead of time is very important.
Right.
Additionally, when it comes to supplies, I would recommend that everyone have a flashlight, a set of spare batteries, if at all possible, an emergency radio, if you financially can. Mm-hmm. There are different ones available online. You can get one that cranks, so if you run out of batteries or don't have them, you still can get that important news. But making sure that you have that, and then for any families who can financially take on that responsibility, to try to have a couple of foodstuffs that are shelf stable available for yourself, and up to 3 days of water, if at all possible. And in my home, I have those big, large blue jugs that you can get from Walmart, mm-hmm. Just to make sure that you have some clean drinking water while maybe the state, the Red Cross, other agencies are trying to get into the community to offer resources.
I think sometimes we forget, if we haven't, as a community, experienced a really massive, like a Joplin level tornado, we forget that services can be completely cut off to a community for quite some time. Yes. And having that water, maybe you're able to get out of your basement or your crawl space or wherever you were able to find shelter, but where are you going to find that fresh water, the food that's available when there's so much happening medically around you?
Right.
It's hard to know. So I think it's really important that we remember that and keep it in a cool, dry place.
Yeah, if you can, if you own your home and you have a storm shelter, leaving those materials there ready to go. I was in a storm situation in another state, and my neighbors had small children. I had some extra water. We ended up sharing it for 3 days until the government was able to get back in and restore water. But to your point, these large storms can affect bridges. They can affect the roads, which can really slow down the delivery of services to a community. Also, we've seen in southern Missouri that at times we will have a tornado that comes through and it hits multiple counties at once.
Yes.
And so just making sure that you have a few additional resources available is one of the best things that you can do if you can.
Even the Red Cross has to use roads to get to us. And so I just also remember that we are a community of neighbors helping neighbors. So sharing your resources during those times is really the best thing that we can do for each other, to take care of one another until people can come to us. So,
and I think Laclede is just an amazing example of community mobilization, of organizations coming together, making sure that everyone is sharing resources. It's really incredible. I've heard so many people talk about it during COVID and how after COVID the community really came together to do so. So I don't know. I think Laclede County and Lebanon is a shining example of what a true American culture is. So
I agree. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. One of the questions I really wanted to ask Lee was, are there any common mistakes people make during severe weather situations that you wish more people understood?
Ooh, I think it goes back to that whole idea of, you hear a watch and you're just like, well, I have plenty of time.
Maybe not taking it as seriously as we should.
Right. And I think
we're all a little guilty of that.
Also understanding that a lot of tornado sirens that are around southern Missouri are really set up so that you hear them when you're outside, but that you don't hear them inside your home. And that's done for a purpose. However, it can cause some confusion. People will think, oh, well, I'm in this building, I'll hear the tornado siren, and that could not be the case unless you have a window open. So again, we have an emergency app with the Red Cross, and so you can go on to any of the app stores and you can download that. I just recommend that you make sure that those permissions are activated so that you can receive notifications in real time. It does a similar sound as an Amber Alert. It will vibrate your phone. A siren will go off. So it should wake you up even in the middle of the night. But really do not depend on a tornado siren to let you know that what bad weather is approaching.
I think this last time when we had our hails, we had a lot of people on social media saying we never knew it was coming, the sirens, we couldn't hear them. And that's a very good point, that it's meant to tell people who are outside to take cover. If you're inside, you're already technically taking cover. It makes sense. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. And I'm really glad you mentioned the app. Obviously, we should all get that on there. Our weather apps do a good job sharing tornado watches and warnings, but they don't always have all those other extra features that the Red Cross app has, especially when you're needing help. Yes. And so that is a fantastic opportunity. Thank you for that. If somebody watching today would like to support the Red Cross, volunteer, which I feel like, how in the world are we going to help each other if we don't have the volunteers available to come to the aid? If you want to be a part of disaster relief and you want to support not just your community, but other communities in need, how do they do that? Through the Red Cross?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, again, 90% of our workforce are volunteers. It's really a community-based program. We do have a national organization as a whole that helps support, especially when very large storms come through, like what happened with Joplin 15 years ago. They really leverage the entire nation to help fundraise and to make sure that resources are coming in from other states so that that people in our communities are taken care of. But when it comes to our day-to-day, or even that initial time between a big storm coming through and waiting for help to come in, having local Red Crossers who are able to answer the call, set up a shelter that has been identified before the storm has happened, communicating with the Red Cross teams in various counties to make sure that we know what's happening on the ground and we're bringing the right supplies is super important. We always ask that people consider volunteering, and that they consider volunteering first in their local community with the American Red Cross. And so they can go to redcross.org. And you can click volunteer up at the top. There's a short application, and then a member of our volunteer services team, they will contact you. They will ask you what your interests are, what your schedule is like, and then find you the right fit so that you are ready to go when the time comes. We have opportunities for people to work in what we call Blue Sky, which is kind of our day-to-day, and home fires are included in that. But then we also have the opportunity for people just to be trained up and ready to go for what we call gray skies. So if a big storm did come through, you would be getting a phone call or a text message or an email, possibly all three, just to see, are you available? Are you safe? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Are you able to get to this area and utilize those trainings ahead of time so that your community is safe and ready to go while we're waiting for more people to come on in and help?
And there's really no age limit to our volunteers. Obviously, small children, we want to be there to protect them, not necessarily collect them as volunteers, but you can be 18, you can be 80. And
Yes.
you are a absolutely welcome volunteer for the American Red Cross. I think sometimes people look at the American Red Cross. It's been around for so long, and it does so much, not even just in our country, but around the world, connecting our service people. It feels so big that we forget that it's absolutely local. We forget that we have local volunteers working those very important blood drives, responding to house fires, right there after a horrible hailstorm or a tornado. And these are our community members. So I encourage you to not think of them as some very large organization that just does all their work somewhere else. They're right here in our community and across Missouri. It's just a beautiful thing. I do have a couple of smaller questions that I wanted to be able to ask you. So how quickly does the Red Cross respond after any type of disaster? And obviously roads are important in that.
Yes, safety is one of our largest concerns. So if there was a large storm that would happen, we would want to make sure that the storm was completed before we would send out teams to assist. And it really does depend. It depends also on local capacity. So if there are multiple disasters or emergencies that are happening, it can extend a little bit on how long it takes a team to get to you. And that's why we always try to encourage communities to consider getting trained up and joining our teams now, because you are helping, you are increasing the ability for us to get to our neighbors and our friends in a timely manner. So we will get the notification from our first responders, and then we will respond as soon as our teams are available to, and the conditions are safe enough to do so.
So sometimes it's within a few hours or even less.
Yeah, it depends. Just last year, we had a storm in Nevada, Missouri, a tornado. We had a Red Cross volunteer who lived right down the road. By the time I arrived, she did have shoes on, but I was told that she arrived at the shelter without her shoes and her grandchildren in tow. She saw that the storm was ending. She knew where the shelter was that needed to be open. She saw the impact of it on the community, and she wanted to make sure that a safe place for the community members was available as soon as possible. So she left her shoes behind. She opened up that shelter, made sure it was available, and then as soon as more of the teams were able to get to Nevada, she was able to go and pick up her shoes, and then just keep working to make sure that there was feeding being done at the shelter, that there were cots, that there was electricity and a place for people to shower, to recover. And that's really the caliber of the volunteers that we have here in southern Missouri.
That's incredible. Now, the final question is, what is one preparedness tip everyone can do this week to get ready for the potential storms coming our way in the month of May?
Yeah. Again, I really think an important part of preparedness is making sure that you have a plan in place. You want to make sure that if you are going, if it's a tornado warning or watch, that you are making sure that you are going into an interior room that has no external windows and no external walls. That is going to be your safest place to go. But not just locating that in your home, making sure that you know where that is in your workplace, making sure that you might know where that would be near a park that you visit, so that you are as best prepared as you possibly can as we have these spring storms that kind of pop up. We have been seeing since the 80s, we've been tracking this information. Our storms haven't necessarily been increasing in frequency as much as they've been increasing in intensity. So what maybe when we were kids was just a light hailstorm is now completely destroying people's vehicles and putting holes in people's roofs. So really making sure that we're starting to take these emergencies more seriously, that we are paying attention when there is a watch, that we're moving to safety when there is a warning is probably my biggest piece of advice for everyone in Southern Missouri. So
excellent. Well, I really, really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Lebanon Now for your monthly community needs update, and we will see you again next month.